Malloy shook his head. This is all wrong. He said this shouldn't be happening. When do something about it get me out of here? There was a movement in the doorway. In the doorway behind them, Miss Devil had appeared, and Noah along with her. She had put on a bright-coloured apron and was holding a basket of apples. Matt wondered if they were from Milroy's benefit, just like the suit she had worn when she went down to London. Don't say anything, Milroy muttered quietly. Leave this to me. Miss Devil come over. She seemed surprised to see someone there. Can I help you? She said. She asked. You don't remember me, Detective? Supernatural didn't Milroy, we met in London. I'm I'm with the Leaf Project. Miss Devil nodded. Of course I remember you, Miss Milroy said. She said, and it's a great pleasure to see you all through. It might have been a curiosity to let me know you were coming. If I recall correctly, you were supposed to give me 24 hours notice of any an official visit. Do you have something to hide, Mr. Wool? Of course not. The hard eyes blinked. You're welcome any time. The fact is that I picked up a report from the local police. Moreau said something about a false alarm at a place called Glendale Farm. Matthew was involved. Oh yes, Miss Devil arranged her features into a look of concern. Matthew and I have already spoken about that. Yeah. I was very sorry that he wasted the police time. Still, in the end, there was no harm done. I think we both put it behind us. Matt wanted to speak, but Murray warned him with his eyes. Why isn't Matthew at school? He asked. It's my feeling that it's too early, Miss Devil replied. I have discussed the matter with my sister. She happened to be the head teacher. We both agree that he would be disruptive influence. We'll send him to school as soon as he's ready. The devil smiled. She was doing her best to appear friendly. Why don't you come inside, Detective Supernatural Detergent? I'm not sure we should be discussing this in front of a boy. Perhaps I could offer you a cup of tea. No thanks, you. No thanks, you, Mr. Verrill. Murray looked around him a second time. I haven't seen very much, he went on, but it seems obviously to me that living conditions on this farm are entirely inadequate for Matthew's needs. We were examined before he come, Miss Devil interrupted, and frequently am applied by Matthew's physical condition. He looks as if he's been worked to the bone. You've actually broken the law by keeping him at school. The boy being perfectly happy. Here, haven't you, Matthew? No, Matt was glad he's been given a chance to speak. I hate it when I hate this farm. I hate you most of all. I was very sorry. I was very sorry that he wanted the police time. I've read that. Yeah, I've read that. Well, that's gratitude, Miss Devil snapped. I'm going back to London, Merrill said, and I want you to know that I'll be connecting the leaf communicate the moment I arrive. I'll be reminding that Matthew is removed from care with immediate effect. Miss Devil's face darkened, her eyes were like razors. I would do that if I were you. Are you threatening me, Miss Devil? There was a long pulse. No, why would I want to do that? I'm a law-abiding person, and if you really think that Matthew would be locked up in some sort of juvenile institution, that's your business. Nevertheless, you aren't meant to be here, Miss Mulroy. You weren't invited, and this visit of yours is a violation of our agreement. You make your report if you want to, but you'll be the one who ends up with the red face. She turned on her heels and walked back into the farmhouse. Matt watched her go with a sense of relaxation. Malloy had defended her. For the first time he could see an end of his ordeal. Malloy led towards him. Listen to me, Matt, he said. I'd put you in the car and take you with me if I could. I wish you would, Matt said. I wish you would, Matt said, but I can't. I don't have any right, and technically, I'd be breaking the law. Miss Devil could even say he'd abducted you, and in the long run, I might be doing more harm than good. But give me 24 hours, I'll be back, and then we'll get you out of this dump, okay? Sure, Matt nodded. Thanks. Leroy sighed. If you want the honest truth, I always against the Leave Project, he said. It's just a giving another bit of government spin. They don't really want to help kids like you. They're only interested in messaging the figures, reducing the number of children behind bars. He walked over to his car and opened the door. Well, as soon as I've put in my report, they'll have to listen to what I say. And whatever happens, I promise you, Miss Deverell will never get custody of anyone ever again. Matt watched him go, then he turned and looked at the farmhouse. Miss Deverell was standing in the doorway. She had taken off the apron and was now dressed all in black. She had seen the detective leave, but said nothing. She stepped back, disappearing into the house. The door slammed shut behind her. It was dark by the time Stephen Murroy reached the motorway and the fast route back to Ipswich. He was deep in thought as he steered his Hyundai estate into the outside lane. No, outside lane. He hadn't told Matt the whole truth. There never had been any conference in Harrogate. Stephen Murroy specialised in juvenile crime. He had met many young do you know that? I don't know that. Delinquest, some only 10 of or 11 years old, and like so many of them, it seemed to him that Matt wasn't so much a criminal as a victim he had already spoken. To Kevin, who was in a remand centre waiting trial, he had met with Gorwin Davis and his partner, Brian. He had read all the reports, but even so, he felt that there was something missing. The boy and the boy and the boy he had met was nothing like the one he'd been reading about. And so immediately after he had handed Matt over to Miss Devil, had decided to see if he could fill in the missing pieces. He was in London anyway. Nobody would know or care how he spent the afternoon. He had taken a taxi to a police records office in South London. Everything he needed was there in a cardboard box, and one of 100 filled away with a reference number and a name, Freeman M.J. There were articles cut out of the local newspaper in Ipswich, reports from both the local and the Metropolitan Police, a post-mortem report and a physical assessment from a doctor who had been attached to the case. The story was exactly as he had been told. A road accident. The parents killed an 8-year-old boy, left behind adoption by by an aunt in Ipswich. Moreau had read all of it but then at the very bottom of the box he had stumbled on a witness report that he had seen. It changed everything. It was a side statement by the woman who had been living next door to Matthews at the time of the accident. She had in fact been looking after him when it happened. Her name was Rosemary Green Malloy. Read it twice, then ordered a taxi to take him to Dulwich. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He doubted she would be in, but he had been in luck. Rosemary was a teacher and arrived home just as he stepped out of a cab. He walked to her outside a small Victorian house with pink and white honeysuckle trailing all the way up the front wall. It was strange to think that Matthew Freeman had once played in the garden next door. It could have been a more difficult world from the one he would later inhabit in Ipswich. Miss Green didn't have much to add to what she had already said. Yes, she agreed that her story didn't seem like, but it was true. She had explained to the police at the time, and she stood by it now, 6 years later. Moreau had drunk 2 miniature bottles of whiskey on the train back to Ipswich. A copy of Matthew's files was on the table in front of him, as well as the late edition of the Evening Standard. The newspaper belonged to one of the passengers sitting opposite him. Moreau had almost stretched it out of the man's hand when he saw the story on the front page. A bizarre pseudo in Albro, a 20-year-old criminal called Will Scott had been found dead in a street close to Lincoln's Inn Field. The case of death was a knife wound to the heart, which police believed to be self-inflicted. Scott had a record for aggravated burglary and assault, and was a known drug dealer. Their witness had seen him following a middle-aged woman dressed in a grey suit with a silver brooch shaped like a lizard police were urging her to come forward. A coincidence. Just read it. This last page. Just read these two pages. So that's it. Maroy remembered the brooch Mister had been wearing. She had arrived late to the meeting, and she might well have to come through Lincoln's Inn Field. Felt certain she must be the woman referred to the article through. He had no idea how she could have been involved in Will Scott's death, but from the moment on Milroy had been worried, he had found himself thinking more and more about Matthew, and he was certain that the boy shouldn't be in her care. Then, only a few days later, he had intercepted a routine transmission from the police station in York. Police station in York, something about another death. One that had been reported by a 14-year-old boy from the Leaf Project. It had been enough for Milroy, and he had cleared a space in his diary and headed north. Now driving back from Leicester Malling, he was very glad he'd done it. What he had seen had been a disgrace. The boy looked ill. More than that, he looked transmitized. And Moreau had quickly noticed the welts on his arm. Well, he would soon put a stop to it. He would hand his own report the very next day. He checked his speedometer. He was doing exactly 17 miles an hour. He had moved into the central lane, and cars were speeding past him on both sides, all of them breaking the speed limit. He watched the red tail lights blur into the distance. It was raining again, tiny drops splattering against the windscreen. Was it his imagination, or had it become very cold inside the car? He turned on the heater, air pumped out of the ventilated grills in the dashboard, but it didn't seem to make any difference. He switched on the windscreen wipers. The road edge trimmed and bent as the water swept over the glass. Moreau glanced at the clock. It was 9:30. He was at least another 2 hours away from Ipswich. It would be midnight before he was home. He turned on the radio to listen to the news. The voices would help keep him awake. The radio was turned to BBC Radio 4, but there was no news at first. Moreau thought there was nothing on the radio at, at all and wondered if it had broken, like the heating. It really was very cold. Perhaps one of the fuses had blown. He would have to take the car into the garage when he got back, but then it came on. There was a burst of a static behind it. Something else. A faint whispering. Puzzled, he leant down and pressed the button that was presented to Classic FM. Roy liked classical music. Maybe there would be a concert, but there was no music. Once again, all he could hear was the strange whispering. They were definitely the same voices. He could even make out some of the words they were saying. Enemy, never, Nitra, or where, wave, traf. What the hell was going on? Frantically, Leroy pressed the button after button, his eyes never leaving the road. It was impossible. The same voices were being transmitted on every station, louder and louder, now more insistent. He turned the radio off. There's that. But the whispering continued. It seemed to be everywhere, all around him in the car. But cold was more intense. It seemed like sitting in a fridge or a deep freezer. Moreau decided to pull over onto the hard shoulder and stop. The rain was coming down harder. He could barely see out of the windscreen. Red lights zoomed past. Blinding white lights sped towards him. He pressed his foot on the brake with significant left. But the indicator had failed and the car wouldn't slow down. Moreau was beginning to panic. He had never been afraid in his life. It wasn't in his nature, but he was afraid now, knowing that the car was out of control. He stamped his foot down more urgently on the brake. Nothing happened. The car was picking up speed, and then it was as if he had hit some sort of invisible ramp. He felt the tires leave the road and the whole car racket into the air. His vision twisted 360 degrees. The whispering had somehow become a giant calamity that filled his consistences. Screamed, his car travelling at 90 miles an hour somersaulted over the crash barrier. The last thing Moreau saw upside down was a petrol tank hurtling towards him. The driver's face frozen in horror, but under it and dis- disguised there was a search of tires, an explosive, a single blare from the loudest horn in the world, then silence. Matt was sound asleep when the covers were torn off him, and he woke up in the chill of the morning to find Mr. Rull in a black dressing gown. Looming over his bed, he looked at his watch. It was 6:10. Outside, the sky was still grey. Rain pattered against the windows. The trees bent in the wind. What is it? He demanded. I just heard it on the radio. Mr. Evans said, I thought you thought to know. I'm afraid it's bad news, Matthew. It seems there was a multiply upon the motorway. Last night, 6 people were killed. Detective Superintendent Leroy was one of them. It's terrible shame, really terrible, but it looks as if you won't be leaving after all. Subscribe, hit the bell, share, like, thank you. Watch my other videos, thank you.